Is Andrew Tate the leader of a secret sex cult? The former kickboxing champion and his brother were arrested in Romania on December 29, 2022, on suspicion of human trafficking and organized crime. But what else could the social media star be hiding? Andrew Tate rose to prominence in 2008, being ranked as the 7th best fighter in the world. He went on to win several kickboxing championships, earning himself the nickname King Cobra. Tate was known for his steely demeanor and supreme self-confidence, both in and out of the octagon. This confidence would be key to his stardom after his fighting career ended. Tate gained a following online, especially among young men on X, formerly Twitter. He became popular enough to be selected as a contestant on the British reality show Big Brother in 2016. During this time, some suspicious claims were made that led to him being kicked off the show after only 6 days. These allegations included claims of Tate hitting a woman with a belt. While legal repercussions were not taken at that time, he was suddenly on the radar. This would be far from his last controversy. Rumors of Andrew Tate being investigated for potential sex crimes began circulating, and while he was not charged with anything at that time, he developed a reputation for being aggressive and domineering with women. Tate also started selling courses teaching young men how to talk to women. What set his methods apart from most pickup artists, however, was his view on manhood. He preached male dominance and aggressive tactics. He claimed repeatedly that men need to reclaim their manhood and that women should be subservient. Tate spoke directly to the insecurities of young men, and many of them bought into his philosophy immediately. He mixed messages of confidence with darker, more sinister ideas, some of which bordered on abuse. His followers were subject to speeches on regaining their dominance, exerting control over women, but also investing in their physical health and gaining confidence. He would claim that women belong in the home, that they can't drive, and that they are given to the men and belong to the man. He also made the argument that men prefer dating 18 and 19-year-olds because they are likely to have had sex with fewer men, and that women who do not stay at home are hoes. He pulled no punches and garnered popularity with his audience, who felt he was a straight shooter. Tate's crass message was interpreted as honesty, and this endeared him to a large audience practically immediately. Early in this process, many noticed the similarities between Tate's methods and those of popular cults. He painted a world where men were under attack and positioned himself as the answer to this problem. He developed private spaces where he could connect with his followers on a more personal level, offering those who are willing to pay a way to be more like him. He quickly established himself as a savior of sorts of true manhood. Even in the beginning, no one could argue with his results. He was incredibly charismatic and exuded confidence and strength. He was known as a real man's man, having had a successful fighting career and had a track record of having fame, money, and beautiful women around him at all times. The lifestyle he preached could be seen as ideal. Tate offered young men the opportunity to reach this dream, claiming he knew the secrets to gaining authority, fame, and popularity with the opposite sex. However, it was not only young men who were falling under his spell. Tate was rarely seen without a beautiful woman on his arm, and allegations concerning his treatment of women persisted. But if he was such an abusive person, why did so many women stick around? Tate's message was not just rhetoric that he preached to make a few bucks. In retrospect, it is clear that he believes everything he said. This domineering confidence is what leads many to believe he's a dangerous cult leader. However, his attitude and message are not the only evidence that indicate there may be more going on in the world of Andrew Tate than meets the eye. In the wake of his arrest, his history came under intense scrutiny, including allegations of abuse and even sexual misconduct. One statement that came to be seen in a new light was his stated reason for moving to Romania in the first place. Tate left the United Kingdom with his brother and relocated to Eastern Europe, where they continued to run Tate's social media empire as well as several other businesses. When asked why he chose Romania, the former light heavyweight champion's answer was surprisingly open and forthcoming. Quote, "I like Eastern Europe as a whole because corruption is far more accessible. I find it offensive that a police officer in England will stop me and refuse to take a bribe." He went on to say that not only was it easier to work with a corrupt system, but he was specifically less likely to be charged with rape. Considering this was an out-of-the-blue statement, many at the time believed it was simply referring to the Me Too movement. Tate had made his position on women empowerment and the flurry of allegations that had come about due to the movement. However, in recent light, his comments are far more chilling. Many believe Andrew Tate was already in the process of developing his sex cult. He moved to Romania under the assumption that his activities would be ignored, and that he would be far more likely to get away with sex crimes there than in Western Europe. He claimed 40% of the reason for the move to Romania was to evade rape charges specifically. He said in an interview, quote, "I'm not a rapist, but I like the idea of just being able to do what I want. I like being free." Upon the Tate brothers' arrival in Romania, it appears they immediately set about establishing themselves in positions of personal power. Claims that they were keeping women trapped in their warehouse-turned-compound began cropping up almost right away. Both men, as well as two women, purportedly engaged in the lover boy method of entrapment. They would identify women who were susceptible to romantic manipulation and would convince them that they were interested in beginning a relationship with them. The women would then be relocated to the compound, where more and more control would be exerted over their lives, until the two Tate men were able to dominate every aspect of their lives. Women were kept at the Tate compound for weeks or even months, and in time they were forced to perform sexual acts on camera for the Tate's financial gain. Allegations of physical and mental abuse, as well as potential sexual assault, have permeated the stories told by the survivors. The Tates have maintained their innocence, claiming the women were never forced to do anything and they always had the option to leave. This is a common tactic among cult leaders. It is known as the chained elephant method. In the days of traveling circuses, elephants would be trained to believe they were chained in place. However, the reality of the situation was that they merely had a rope around their ankle, often only tied to a pole. Clearly, the restraint would not keep them in place if they attempted to escape, but the prison which held them was not a physical one. The belief that they were trapped was stronger than any physical restraints ever could be. The women Tate has allegedly abused and forced into his sex cult have described similar situations. They claim that in the beginning, the Tates were sweet and accommodating. The bad boy persona they have online was dropped and they appeared to show their real selves. This slowly changed as the women turned over more and more of their lives to their new romantic interests. In the time they would move in with the Tates, by then they had control of the women's entire lives. They made them financially dependent on them, convincing them to quit their jobs and leave their homes to stay at the compound 24/7. Now, the women could technically leave, but as Tate told more than one of his victims, where would they go? They had no one and nowhere to turn to. They needed the Tates, and if they wanted to stay off the streets, they had to do what their captors told them. And so the abuse and manipulation went into overdrive. Cult leaders often trap their victims slowly like this. They give the outward appearance that these people are choosing to be involved freely, when in reality they are being masterfully manipulated into giving up their freedoms one by one. Many cult victims do not realize they're being coerced until long after they have been liberated. Some never come to that realization at all. Andrew Tate's sex cult went under the radar for a long time, partially because of the control he holds over his male audience. No one noticed anything out of the ordinary because the persona Tate displays publicly was one of being above everything. Many on the outside merely assumed he was maintaining appearances so that he could continue to scam young men out of money. The reality appears to be far more sinister. He and his brother were indeed scamming impressionable young men into giving them money every month, and they were using that income to endanger untold numbers of women into sexual slavery. Tate is far from the first to pull such a scam, as R&B sensation R. Kelly famously did something similar in the United States for years. R. Kelly only recently was held accountable for his cult-like predatory practices. Andrew Tate, it seems, may still get away with his. Tate and 3 of his accomplices were arrested and charged with sexual crimes and organized crime. However, as time has gone by, the chances of being convicted of these allegations seems to be dwindling. Tate has used these events to garner more support from his followers and to expand his base audience. The fact that he and his cohorts have been charged with organized crime indicates the Romanian government knows there is more going on than just the sexual manipulation of young women. Organized crime laws were, generally speaking, developed to combat mob activity around the world. The United States has several famous organized crime laws that were developed to put kingpins behind bars throughout the entire 20th century. Romania, while more lax in their dealings with people like Andrew Tate, do have their own set of laws in place for circumstances such as these. When these organized crime laws were triggered, it showed that what was going on at the Tate compound was far more sinister than aggressively asserting Tate's alpha male status. These women were being used and abused, all for the financial gain of the House of Tate. While the Tate cult does not appear to have been conducting blood rituals or sacrificing young women to Molech, there were still trafficking women across international lines, keeping them against their will and brainwashing them into staying in a position of abuse and neglect. Will Andrew Tate and his co-conspirators be held accountable for their actions? Only time will tell. Regardless of what happens to them in the long run, eagle-eyed observers should keep their eyes peeled and their ears to the ground. There is no telling just how much deeper the rabbit hole goes when it comes to the Andrew Tate sex cult.